I was in prison and you came to me. That's a line from the book of Matthew, chapter 25. And this is about why I write to prisoners, why I send them books. People often ask me why I write to prisoners. I write to prisoners because I can't not reach out a helping hand to what has become one of the fastest growing populations and the fastest growing tragedies in America. And because I know from personal experience as a former inmate, a former convict myself, how it feels to believe that because of your mistakes, you've been written off by society as not worthy. I know what it feels like to sit in a 6 by 9 foot pen, a concrete bathroom, caged like an animal, forgotten by family and friends, without a ray of hope for change. When I was doing time between 1966 and 1977, the entire U.S. prison population was approximately 280,000 men and women. That included all federal and state prisoners. Today, that number has risen to a staggering 2.3 million. We've surpassed even China to achieve the status of being the country that houses the most prisoners on earth. The prison crisis has become a growing monster, eating up resources that we could easily be applying to giving our youth a better education, or feeding our indigent, or addressing the needs of the growing senior population. What's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this picture? 10 times the amount of prisoners since I've been there. And what are we doing to turn this trend around? New York City last year spent $167,731 to feed, house, and guard each inmate. That's just last year. The national average is about $75,000 per year, more than the national average of average household income. So every day we put inmates back onto the street without a prayer of hope for transitioning successfully back into society. They hit the streets with the clothes on their back, $50 in their pockets, and get this, no form of official identification. Now, you tell me, how is a person supposed to survive with that kind of shoddy, inhumane send-off? Just kicking them out in the world. Yet we're shocked and appalled when we see the rate of recidivism. How many people come back to prison year after year? What's wrong with these people, we say? We ask, what's the world coming to? Well, unless or until we as individuals are willing to say, stop, enough of this inhumanity, this crisis will continue forever. It'll escalate. It'll get worse. Jesus said, truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. That's also in Matthew chapter 25, verse 40. Sometimes all it takes is a book or a letter to inspire hope and a desire for change. We all make mistakes. But for the grace of God, there go I. As an educated society, our goal should not be to humiliate and punish indefinitely, but rather to share resources and tools that can correct the error thinking, the wrong thinking that led to the mistake in the first place. A Course in Miracles, for example, has a workbook of 365 lessons, one for each day of the year, that offers a curriculum that lays the foundation for placing responsibility for our actions not outside ourselves, but within. It lays the foundation for spiritual empowerment, for shifting from a role of victim to a role of co-creator with God. A Course in Miracles teaches that everyone is God's holy child. Everyone is the Holy Son of God, the Holy Child of God. We are all equal. It teaches us that we all have a voice in our hearts that is always providing guidance. Holy Spirit. Telling us that we are unlimited, one with all life, eternal, loving, and loved. That voice is the Holy Spirit. There's another voice in our mind that tells us lies. It tells us we are limited, separate, vulnerable, and incorrigible. Worms of the dust. Given love and respect, no one is incorrigible. I'm convinced that people used to look at me and saw a worthless loser. That's how I felt about myself. But when everyone in the outside world had seemed to have given up on me, that voice within, the Holy Spirit, never gave up its whispering to me, its visual to help me remember who I really am, the holy and innocent child of God. And when I refused to listen, to take the voice seriously, it simply stepped up the program and hit me in the head with a spiritual 2x4. God showed up for me one day in all His glory while in prison. He lifted me out of the body and gave me a glimpse of who I really am. He held me up and assured me that I would be all right. Eventually I would seek and find my function in this world to take every experience in this life, from growing up without a mother through orphanages, juvenile delinquency and prison, to dedicating the rest of this life to sharing God's message of hope to all prisoners, whether bound by walls and bars or by the eagle's tenacious thirst for control. Now, there are approximately a little over 2,000 prison ministries in this country. Most of them are sponsored by fundamentalist churches whose message to confined men and women is the age-old dogma of fire, brimstone, hell, and damnation. I don't have a church. I don't have backing or support of large congregations or federal assistance. What I do have is the knowledge that in the years I've been doing this, several thousand prisoners have changed their life for the better, forever, by the books I send to them. I have the delightful knowing that, like a child under a Christmas tree opening presents, a prisoner somewhere in this country is being visited by a different kind of Santa Claus, when the guard who delivers their mail stops at their cell and hands them one of my packages. And that is what I live for every day. See, I was in prison, and He came to me, and now I go to them. You can see more of what is done to help prisoners at acimlive.com or spiritlightoutreach.org. If you care to help, visit one of those two sites, or joewolfbooks.com. Thank you for listening.